Hi, and welcome to Crafts with Ash. Today I'm bringing you 5 last-minute, very simple Dollar Tree Easter DIYs to get finished this weekend, and that way you can display them on Easter. But first, if you haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit that little notification bell so you can get notified anytime I upload a new video. Also, don't forget to like me and follow me on Instagram and Facebook and join my crafting community. And if you love all things DIY, home decor, and party planning, don't forget to like this video. All right, let's begin. So for my first very simple DIY, and probably my favorite one out of all 5, I started off with this chalkboard from the Dollar Tree. Now this is the one that has a little stand on the bottom, and first I put some, I believe actually this was duct tape, although you probably want to use painter's tape, but this did work. And I just wanted to protect the chalkboard in the middle, so I went ahead and put some tape all around the edges so I didn't get any paint on the chalkboard. Then by using my ballet slipper, I gave this one really good coat of that, and I just made sure to cover the entire thing, also including the bottom. Next, I took this candlestick holder, also from the Dollar Tree, and I gave this 2 coats of my ballet slipper from Waverly. I put both of those aside and let them dry. Then I took this crayon out of the little packs of crayons, and if you caught my tiered tray video, you saw that I used these to put on jars. But I just took one of the crayons, and to make it easier to paint, I stuck it on a skewer and then painted my little bunny with the ballet slipper as well. Once everything was all dry, it was time to put it all together. So I took my chalkboard and peeled all the tape off to reveal the chalkboard again. And then by using some hot glue, I am going to hot glue this on top of the candlestick. Now, I kind of thought that I would add extra support to the candlestick to help it. I don't know if this was actually necessary, because I realized it probably would be the same thing if I just glued the chalkboard right on top of the candlestick, but at least it helps me sleep at night, I guess. So I just cut off a little bit of a craft stick, hot glued it on top of the candlestick, and then I also painted that with the ballet slipper too. I made sure to also paint the underneath part because you might be able to see that. Then once that was dry, I took this super glue adhesive from the Dollar Tree, mixed it with some hot glue for that permanent hold and instant hold, and then put my chalkboard right on top. Then I took that super glue and hot glue and glued my bunny to the top of my little chalkboard. I apologize, I went out of frame here. I've been trying different angles. I got a new tripod, so let me know if you like this angle. It's just more kind of on top of my projects rather than to the side, but let me know in the comments what you think. After everything was all glued together, I took some ivory chalk paint and my favorite distressing brush, and I just lightly brushed over all of the pink parts of my chalkboard. Of course, I did not do inside of the chalkboard, but I went around the frame, on the bunny, and of course the candlestick. I loved how this came out. I thought it was so cute. Now, I have not written on it yet, and I am so excited to put Happy Easter or Hello Spring or something very cheerful. That way it just welcomes spring and Easter into our home and welcomes people into our home as well. I just thought this was festive, and again, if you've been following me, you know I am loving the pastel colors for this spring and Easter, so this fit right into all of my home decor. So I am ready to display this next to all of my other pastel pieces. What do you think? For my second very easy DIY, I'm starting off with this banner from the Dollar Tree. And I love these because they were already cut in the shape that I needed, and maybe you'll catch on to what we are going to make. But they come in 6 individual pieces, but I'm going to double them up to make 3 different pieces. The first thing I'm going to do is hot glue 2 of the pieces on top of each other. Now, you don't want to put any hot glue on the top because you want to leave the top open. So you're just going to put hot glue around the edges going down to the point. I hope that makes sense. But you can see what I'm doing here. But you just want to leave the top open and unglued. After all my pieces were glued together, I took some orange acrylic paint, I believe this is called Pumpkin from Apple Barrel, and a makeup sponge, and I painted over the burlap. Now, I didn't brush it on, I just kind of pounced it on, so I'm just dabbing it all over. Now, I do want some of the burlap to come through, so it is okay if not all of it is completely covered, but I did cover the little gold rings on the top, so that way it all blended in. I did this for all 3 of my triangles. Once my pieces were dry, I took the twine that actually came with it and I cut off a little piece of it, and then going from the back, I looped in each end through one of the rings. So that way I had 2 separate pieces in the front. Did you figure out what we're making yet? This might give it away. Next, I took some foliage that I also got from the Dollar Tree and stuck it right on top. I took the little stems off of the bigger stem and then just kind of positioned them how they looked best. So I kind of played with it, but you definitely want them sticking out the top. Then I took those 2 ends of the twine and I tied a little bow right in the front. We are making carrots, if you haven't guessed. But I just thought this was a really neat way to do it. It's very rustic, and I thought that these were really cute, and it's a really fun basket filler or like a display to put them on a tiered tray or something like that. So I really loved how these came out. But then if I just felt like it needed tacked down a little bit, I went ahead and added some hot glue, and I thought that these were really fun. So I did this to the other 2 as well. Now, my original idea for this was to actually make it a banner, but I wasn't quite sure how many triangles came in one pack. So, rookie mistake, I should have bought another pack, but if I would have had more than just 6 pieces to ultimately make 3 pieces, and then there would have been 6 altogether, I hope that makes sense, I would have actually made this into a banner. So that's another idea that you could do too, and I think that that would be really super cute. Next, to give it more of an antique-y, rustic look, I took my Waverly wax and I kind of lightly brushed over the top, and I kind of gave it those lines that carrots have, and I used a makeup sponge for this, and I used the pointy part, and it worked out perfectly. Now, I keep going back and forth. I'm not sure if I really like that I did that. It kind of looks like tiger stripes, but you're going to have to let me know down in the comments. Would you have added this, or would you have just let it be just with the orange? But like I said, I loved how these came out. I put them in a basket with some raffia, and I thought that this was a great display just to throw on a table. What do you think? If you thought the last two DIYs were easy, this one is super easy. The only thing you're going to need are 3 balloons, and you're going to blow them up into the shape of an egg. So you can kind of see that I blew it up, and then I kind of used my hands to form the shape that I wanted. I did do 2 kind of bigger ones and then 1 smaller one. And then once they were all blown up, I took my Mod Podge and I brushed my Mod Podge over the balloons, and I put a lot of Mod Podge on the balloons. I wanted to make sure that it was a very strong hold. So I brushed it all over the balloons, and then by taking the brand new twine from the Dollar Tree, I just wrapped the twine around the balloons. Now I had 3 different colors, so I did 3 different twine eggs. So first I just glued it down. And then I just wrapped and wrapped and wrapped, and I went in all different directions and just layered it and, just had fun, and I just wrapped it all around. And then once I got to where I kind of felt like it was wrapped enough, I just cut it off and glued down the end, and then I put a really nice thick coat of Mod Podge on top of the twine. So I did this for all 3 of my eggs, and the end result is so neat. Now this is not my creation. I've seen a lot of creators do this, and I just thought this was an easy idea to give because it is so simple to do, and it really does not take that long to do. The only thing I would recommend is doing it at night or during the day and then letting it sit overnight. That's exactly what I did. I made these in the evening, and then I woke up the next morning after they were completely dry, and I went ahead and moved on to the next step. But basically, this is it. And you guys, they came out so cute. Okay, so as you saw, this is now the next day, so I just took a skewer. You could take a pin or a needle, whatever you have, and you want to pop your balloon. Now, I did notice that because we used Mod Podge, it was glued to some of the string, so you might just have to kind of poke it through a couple different parts of the string, that way to disconnect the balloon from the string. But you just want to kind of go carefully and just go within. You can use your scissors to do this, basically however you have to get the balloon out. And then you just carefully pull the balloon out, whatever hole you can find, and then you might have to just take your hands and kind of shape it again because some of the string might have kind of come unraveled. Now here I'm just taking the other end of my skewer and kind of poking through some of the Mod Podge that you could still see, but look how cute those are. I loved those. What do you think? For my next DIY, I started off with this little box sign from the Dollar Tree. Now, they have these all year round. It might not be an Easter one. It doesn't have to be because we're going to use the inside. So the first thing I did was pull off the little hanger and then peel off the sticker. Surprisingly, that one came off pretty easy. Then I took my ivory chalk paint from Waverly and painted the entire thing, including the sides. Next, I took this cocoa liner that I got from the Dollar Tree and I cut it down the center, and then I just wanted to cut the little bottom round off. So I just cut the bottom of the cocoa liner around, and then that way I had just a little circle of the cocoa liner. So I had never worked with this before, so I was just kind of playing with it and I wanted to crumble it, and then I realized, oh, it peels. So I went ahead and peeled off the layers, and then I took one of the layers and I hot glued it to the inside of that box. Now, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do here. I kind of had a vision in my head, but I just kind of played with it and I kind of bunched it up. I wanted it to look like a nest, so I just kind of glued it wherever I saw, but I did make sure to cut off any excess that was hanging over the top, and then I ended up adding another layer on top of it, that way to just make sure it was nice and thick. Next, I took a handful of Spanish moss and I kind of shaped it in a round shape now to kind of get that nest look. So I'm mixing the cocoa liner and the Spanish moss to make it look kind of natural and realistic, I guess. I don't know, you let me know what you think about this one, but I went ahead and hot glued it down. Then, of course, to add some antique distressing, I took my Waverly Antique Wax and that makeup sponge and I just lightly dry brushed over the top of the box and around the sides. Next, I took 3 of these little eggs that I got from the Dollar Tree, and again, to make it easier to paint, I stuck them on skewers, and I just lightly brushed over some ivory chalk paint. Now, it was okay if the original color came through. I kind of liked that. I just did this to kind of dull down the colors, and by using these do have glitter on them, so it added a really neat texture. I've been doing this a lot this spring to a lot of the eggs, so I really love how these came out. After my eggs were dry, I arranged them in my little nest how I like them. Now, I did have to peel some of the moss off, that way they fit right in the middle, and then I hot glued them down once I arranged them how I like. Now, I decided after the fact that I kind of wanted to give them that speckled look, but I would have done this before I hot glued these down, but too late, they were already hot glued down. But I took some black acrylic paint and a brush, and by using my thumb, I just kind of flicked all of the black acrylic paint over my little eggs. Now, it did kind of get everywhere, including on my frame, so I just went back and wiped it off, and then I ended up adding more Waverly wax just to kind of make the edges more defined. I think that this is so cute. I wasn't sure as this was going how I was going to like it, but I did end up really loving it, and again, it brought in those pastel colors. What do you think? Now, this last DIY, I was inspired by literally everybody in Dollar Tree groups on Facebook. Everybody has been taking these cute little bunnies and dressing them, basically making them clothes. So I had to try it. So I grabbed one of the bunnies, and then I took this fabric that I got from the Dollar Tree. Now, as you're watching me, I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never made a dress. I've never done this before. So if you see me hesitate or go back and forth, it's because you are literally watching me trying to decide how I'm going to do this as it happens. So I took that fabric and I laid my bunny on top of the back of the fabric. Then I just cut it down so it was a little easier to work with. But I did make sure that it was long enough to cover my bunny. So here I'm trying to decide how I want my bunny's little dress to look. So I'm just kind of trying different things. Now, like I stated, you are watching me come up with this as it is happening. So I'm just kind of playing around with it. So I decide to cut the piece I just cut in half, and now this is going to be the top part of my dress. But you're going to see me move it to the bottom because at first I thought it was going to be the skirt, and then I moved it back. I mean, like I said, I am literally coming up with this as you are watching it. I have no clue what I'm doing or what I'm even going for. I knew I wanted her to wear a dress, but I wasn't sure how to achieve that. So what I did was I ended up using that little strip as the top part. And so, but I turned it so it was long way. So it was kind of skinnier on her chest. And then I cut it down. And then what I wanted to do was hot glue down the edges. But first I took some of this ribbon, and these are going to be the straps of her little dress. So I cut 2 pieces off, and then I kind of placed them underneath just to see how I would like them. And I made sure to put her little arms in the front. Then I went ahead and just kind of, I don't know, just folded it in, just kind of played with it again. How do I want this to look? Then I took that other piece that I was going to use as the top, but decided not to. And I made this part the skirt. So I wanted the skirt to look pleated, but first I had to clean up the edges. So what I did was ran a bead of hot glue at the top and then folded it over to give it a nice, clean, folded edge. Now I'm going to try to explain this the best I can, but it's probably best that you just watch. So to make the pleat, I just folded in the edge, hot glued it down, and then I just kind of kept folding. Now first I put the pleats too close together, so I attached that from what I just glued. And I realized it was easier. After I glued the pleat down, I went like a half an inch or an inch over, pulled that up, and then glued that down. So you're gonna see I pinch it right here, right there, and then I hot glue it down where it is folded. And I just did that the entire length of that piece of fabric. Now you're gonna notice the bottom is not evenly cut, but we're gonna fix that in just a little bit. But I just kept folding and gluing. Now at one point you're going to see that I turned this to the side right here, so it's a little easier for you to see. So I just pinched it and glued it and then pushed it down. And like I said, I did that the whole length of the fabric. When I got to the end, I folded it over and hot glued it down. Then I grabbed my bunny, and now I'm kind of deciding how I want the top to look with my skirt. So I decided, ultimately at the end, I decided that I wanted the top to be a little skinnier than the skirt. So there you go. So now you see that there's little openings on either side of her hips. So once I figured that out, I took that little piece that's her top, and I again wanted to make it nice clean edges. So I folded the edges and hot glued them down. So before I glued her top down, I decided that I needed to glue down the little pink straps. So here's where I'm deciding, do I want the straps on top of the fabric or under the fabric? I did decide to go under the fabric. So I kind of placed it on there, flipped her over, and tied the 2 ends together around her neck. Then I flipped her over, and then I hot glued each of the ends around one on top of each of her shoulders. I hope that made sense. But I just hot glued the ends down basically on each of her shoulders. Then I decided to go ahead and make the smaller ends cleaner. Now I only did one because the other part's going to be cut off, but the part that you just folded over and glued, you're going to want to put that on the top. So then I went ahead and glued down her top. Now I know that this seems complicated and I keep going back and forth, but I'm telling you, after I figured out what I was doing, it was so easy to put together, and from here on out it is super easy. So then I took that skirt and I hot glued that to the bottom of her little shirt where her hips are. Now it doesn't cover her behind, but that's okay, it's a bunny and bunnies don't typically wear clothes anyways. So I just hot glued the back, and you saw that I put a little dab in the front too, and I held it down until all the glue had set. Then I went ahead and took my scissors and I just cleaned up the bottom. Now, it was hard. It would have been hard for me to try to make this a nice clean edge by gluing like we did the other edges. So I just kind of let it go and just let it be a raw edge. And it turned out fine. Next, it was time to add some embellishments, so I took all these buttons from the Dollar Tree and I spent an insane amount of time trying to find 2 matching buttons, or even close to matching. So finally, I pulled out these 2 little yellow ones and hot glued one down on each of the sides of the top of her dress. So then I decided that she needed even more embellishments. So in a minute, you're going to see I'm going to take some pink burlap ribbon that I also got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to cut off a little piece of it, and I'm going to make sure that I have the hem on it. So you can see I'm cutting a strip down, but I'm making sure that I also have the part that's hemmed. And then by putting the hem on top, I'm going to glue that around the top of her skirt. Now, after I got that glued down, I realized I liked that hot pink a lot, and so I decided to change out the straps on her dress, and it was super easy to do. I just pulled back the top of her dress and then hot glued each little strap down. So first I untied that bow that I originally tied with that see-through ribbon, and then just hot glued those ends down. I didn't even bother taking them off. And then I cut off 2 little strips of the burlap ribbon and then hot glued those down. And like I said, it was easy. I just peeled it back, threw a little hot glue down there, and then slipped it under there, held it down until it was dry. And then I did realize this time that I could actually slip that burlap ribbon underneath her little arm. See how there's like a little opening? So I put it underneath her little shoulder, I guess it would be, and then hot glued that down. Now the back of her does not look very pretty, but that's okay because I put her up against a wall anyways. So to add a little bit more detail, I took this pearl ribbon that I got from the Dollar Tree and cut off a little strip, and then I hot glued that to the middle of the burlap going around her skirt. Then to bring in the pearl design up top, I cut off 2 little pearls off of that strand and hot glued a pearl in each of the little buttons. Next, it was time to focus on her ears, so by using this yellow ribbon, I just made a very simple bow, just how you would tie your shoes, and then I hot glued that down into the middle of her ears. Then I took a little strand of the pearls and hot glued that onto the middle of the bow. Now, if I would have decided to do the pearls before I hot glued the bow down, obviously I would have done that first, but I decided to add the pearls after, so I just put a little strip of the pearls going down the middle of the bow. Then I cut the tails of the bow to make them even, and I just cut them at an angle to make it a nice clean edge. Then I decided that she was missing one last thing. So I grabbed one of my twine carrots that I had in my stash and I hot glued it to her hands, and I thought that this totally brought her to life. I totally wish that I had picked up more of these little rabbits so I could make more of these. This would make a great gift for like a grandma, a great grandma, or a mom, mother-in-law. So I loved how this came out, and I know it was kind of tricky, but I think it was totally worth it. What do you think? I think that each one of these DIYs came out so cute, and it was a great way to wrap up all of my Easter and somewhat spring DIYs. I might throw a few more spring DIYs, but I'm kind of ready to move into summer. But this was a great way to wrap it all up. You're going to have to let me know in the comments which one was your favorite DIY. Like I said, I think that chalkboard frame was mine, but that little bunny at the end was definitely a close second. And like I stated, I wish I would have picked more of those up because they would have been great gifts to give. So now I know if they bring those back next year to pick up a few. I think another great thing about all of these DIYs is that each one of them cost less than $3 to make. You totally cannot beat that. So I am very happy with how all of these turned out. I want to thank all of you so much again for joining me. If you are new here, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, and then don't forget to hit that notification bell so you can get notified whenever I upload a new video. And if you loved what you saw today, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Well, until I see you again, I'll craft with you soon. Bye!